So we've been checking out the George Floyd trial, and our episode today is about how law enforcement traumatizes Black youth. Um, one of the parts of the George Floyd trial this week was the youth who were there who actually filmed George Floyd being murdered by Derek Chauvin. We also held a rally this week for little Desmond Knight, who was choked, who was actually choked by, we believe, White Bear Police Department, and we're demanding that that video footage be released. But watching the Derek Chauvin trial this week, to me, one of the most profound components of the trial was watching the children testify about what they seen that happened. And you seen the little girl testifying. She was like 8 or 9 years old, and you could tell that she was still traumatized by the incident. You seen other youth there who testified. You could tell that they were still traumatized by the incident of seeing Derek Chauvin murder George Floyd like that. And this type of trauma happens a lot in the Black community. When Philando Castile was murdered by a police officer, Lil Day was there. She was there to witness what happened to Philando Castile. Earlier this week, we held a rally on Friday for Desmond Knight, the 13-year-old or the young child who was choked by the Maplewood Police Department. Also last week, there was some children who were punched by the police over there in Minneapolis. So we're seeing these incidents where Black youth are having encounters with law enforcement or are witnessing police terror, and it's causing trauma to the Black youth in the community. And it really needs to stop, and it must be addressed. So those are some of the things that we've been talking about. Those are some of the takeaways that I had from the Derek Chauvin trial. Also, a lot of people are really compelled by the testimony of Lieutenant Zimmerman, who basically said that once George Floyd was on the ground, that there was no more reason for Derek Chauvin to have his knee in George Floyd's neck the way that he did. Pretty much all of the witnesses were very profound. The Black MMA fighter, the brother that kept saying, you're a bum. His testimony and his knowledge of chokeholds were very profound during the testimony this week. When he was able to tell what kind of angles were being used, when force was being applied. Even the children could tell that Derek, as they were calling him, was applying more force to George Floyd's neck to kill him. And basically he was there to try to kill him. Another thing that I was taking from what people were saying was that they were helpless to do anything about it. They felt helpless in that moment to stop George Floyd from doing anything. And I think it's a psychological thing in the Black community, you know. So if one of those people would have tried to do something, they would have been pepper sprayed, they would have been handcuffed, they could have been shot. I'm pretty sure everybody, including the kids, knows what happens, knows the relationship that Black people have with law enforcement. So it's very hard to step in in a situation like that. But I think we're at a point in society where that may start happening, where Black people may start stepping in when we see law enforcement murdering one of us or terrorizing one of us or brutalizing one of us, even if it causes one of us to get arrested or harmed, and that's the reality of it when we're talking about our humanity. And basically that's what the George Floyd trial is about Black people's humanity. And do our lives matter? And is the United States government going to respect our humanity and give a correct decision? But that was another thing, the helplessness that the people watching felt, that they couldn't step in and do nothing to stop George Floyd being murdered. That was another one of the takeaways from the beginning of this trial this week, but also something that we knew that the defense was going to try to do was the dehumanization and the demonization of George Floyd. And you seen Derek Chauvin do it immediately after the murder. That was like, well, he was big, he was Black, I had to kill him, is basically what he was saying. And that's basically what police officers always say, whether it's Eric Garner, Mike Brown. He was big, he was Black, I was scared, I feared for my life, I had to kill him. And that's what they do. And that's the playbook. So now we're going to see, does this playbook continue to work in 2021 in the George Floyd COVID-19 era? Do police get to get away with murder in front of everybody, in front of the whole world? Like I think she said, I think what is hard too is that when you see police mistreating a person, who do you call to step in? Like you said, you could be a victim as well for stepping up and stepping in. I'm not saying it's right, not right, just that police have too much authority, and I agree. And so you heard him say he called the police on the police. He didn't know what to do, and who's that's the question. Who's going to protect Black people from the police is the question. And it's profound to watch this trial play out. When the defense starts bringing forth their witnesses, you're going to see them really try to dehumanize George Floyd and make him appear like an animal and make it seem like he deserved to die because he was Black. And that's the playbook that they do. We're going to see a lot of anti-Blackness from the defense coming forward in the trial. So you should be prepared for that. You seen what you seen. You know how you felt when you seen George Floyd being murdered. It all came back to me again when the trial started. I got angry all over again watching him plead for his life, call for his mother. And she's right. George Floyd isn't on trial. Derek Chauvin's on trial. But, the prosecutors felt it was necessary to talk about his addiction, his drug use, and put that out there because they know that the defense is going to talk about that and try to use that as an excuse of why George Floyd should have died instead of Derek Chauvin being held accountable for murdering somebody and holding his knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. So that's what we're going to be looking at next week. I also thought, man, what was really, really, really hard to watch was the elder brother who broke down on the stand and he started crying really hard in tears. And because he felt that same powerlessness. But he's older than George Floyd and still couldn't stop Derek Chauvin from murdering. To be an older black man and to be powerless when a white race soldier or a police officer is killing a black person has to be such a devastating feeling. I know when I see black kids or something's happening to black kids, and we can step in as far as we can, but once that car takes off, it's like, it's out of your control. And that's how our ancestors had to feel during slavery. Once the children were kidnapped, or once, on the plantation, when you would see one of your children or one of the youth or one of the just one of the slaves being disciplined by the slave master. That's probably the same feeling that the older black man was feeling when he broke down in tears on the witness stand, right? So we're dealing with a lot of dynamics during this trial. To me, it's an open and shut case, but be prepared to hear horrible things about George Floyd. So that's how the defense is going to try to justify their murderous actions. And that's what they always try to do. They try to blame the victim and say it was George Floyd's fault because of this and because of that, not because Derek Chauvin was just wicked and held his knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes because he's used to doing it. So hopefully there's going to be justice in this case. I'm looking forward to talking about the rest of the trial with you guys next week. But there's a lot of emphasis on, to me, the most important thing right now is just really watch the trial. This is historic. There's going to be protests, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. But at this time right now, the most important thing is the trial. I would I would continue to advocate for reparations at the local, state, and federal level, and I will continue to make sure that people have access to resources and goods that people need in helping people deal with trauma, because the Black community is dealing with a lot of trauma right now. This is a very traumatizing time. So just making sure Black people have all the resources that they need to get through this trial. And make sure a lot of the churches are giving out food, giving out things like that. So just anybody who's helping, help them. Help those who are helping. And that's what I say. And just help the people in general if you can. So I'd like to thank you guys all for tuning in. Just want to jump in real quick and talk about the analysis. We'll be doing a 5. So also, when Philando Castile was murdered, you also seeing the little girl consoling the mother and having to tell the mother it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. But again, that was another incident where Black youth was being traumatized by law enforcement, and that child is still traumatized. Desmond Knight, last Wednesday, he was choked out by a White Bear Lake police officer, I believe, We want to see the footage released in that instant. That's another time where he actually was a youth who was choked out by law enforcement. There was a black child, I believe a baby, a couple of weeks ago, was shot by police. There, over in Minneapolis, somebody was punched by the police. So we can see these scuffles. I know down in Texas, this might have been like in 2016, the police came into a classroom and dragged a little girl out of her desk and was throwing her around. Another police came to a birthday party, grabbed a little black girl and was throwing her around. Up here at Central, I believe in 2016, an officer was dragging another child around. So these encounters that our children are having with law enforcement don't happen in Egan. They don't happen in Edina, and they don't happen to white people's kids, but they happen to our kids. And our kids matter, and they deserve justice, and they don't need to be treated that way by law enforcement. So over the next couple of weeks, we're doing a series about BLM Minnesota is doing a series about anti-blackness during this time, or anti-black racism. You can go to the website and read the first article. The first article is talking about law enforcement and media and how historically media has demonized Black people, and that demonization of Black people has allowed for Black people to be killed. In the Constitution, Black people are even demonized and called 3/5 of human beings, to allow slavery, to allow us to be treated as property or ownership. So to dehumanize somebody or to legitimize it, they would have to say that we're not human. And that's kind of the same defense that they're about to try to use in the Derek Chauvin case. They use this to justify slavery. And they use that same type of argument to practice racial discrimination against Black people, housing discrimination against Black people, unjust treatment in the medical field against Black people, to say things like we can tolerate more pain because we're Black, etc., or deny us of medicine, etc. They use this same type of dehumanizing of Black people in the criminal justice system to justify over-policing us and brutalizing us and ultimately just murdering us. So these are some of the tactics you're going to see coming forth in the Derek Chauvin murder trial. And we'll, over the next couple of weeks, we'll be digging into anti-Blackness in the COVID-19 Derek Chauvin murder trial era. So thank you all for tuning in. Tune in next week for the whole show on the Trend Cruise Show. We just had to pop in. It's Easter Sunday, so I know a lot of you are celebrating Easter, so I just want to pop up and say what's up and let you get back to your dinner or whatever type of festivity you're involved in right now. Thank you for tuning in. All right.